Hi, Diego. Here's a little bit of feedback. I'm not sure if this, if one is the front page or if that's, a fold line or not. But one of the things I wanted to point out is when you have font that's curving, everything has to curve with it. So here, this needs to curve with it and have the same space. Um, it will show up differently depending on if you have this descender on the G and the uppercase I. So that kind of interrupts the flow. You always want to watch how those two things line up and if you need more space sometimes because of a ascender or descender. It may even sometimes determine if you use all caps and a heading or something because it can make a big difference. This kind of the same thing. This probably wants to fold in here a little bit so that it curves like this. I'm thinking it comes in just a little on an angle, probably the same angle as the L, right? The letters. And of course they slope and change just a little, but probably very, very close to the D. I mean, you already do have that curve. I think I would just bring it over a little bit. You may have already tried that. I wish I had, there's a tool that lets me know what font you're using, but that's in Chrome. But yeah, and I would try a version with a period because it's a sentence. But that's not a deal breaker. So yeah, let's see. Yeah, that space. Okay. Yeah, so I'm curious how this breaks up and if you wanted to put a little soft drop shadow underneath the shape, right? That might help. So here, a couple of things. I know this is probably like a little introduction paragraph, but it is a different font, right? And it's not so different in size that it looks like it's separate. It's so close in font size that it looks like it's just the incorrect font here, that it's not being consistent. So I would think about that. Either this would be bigger or something there. I don't know what size this is, but that's something. The other thing is your, I don't know if this is a copy that was given to you or if you're able to adjust it or not. I would find a way to wrap this to where we have a little more consistent gutter space here between your columns. So a word isn't hanging out by itself. You see how that one is out here? And then this tends to feel like the gutter, but then it's probably someplace in between. So I don't know if you're free to adjust the copy or not. Okay. Ideally, if you can, you'll want to have the same number of rows. So if you're ending here, you would want to edit that to where it ends in the same place, probably across. So probably one less line here and one line here to make it the same, whatever that requires. I don't know if you need just a little more line space here, maybe. Because, let's see, I'm looking for a descender and seeing if that's enough space between a descender and ascender. That feels tight, but mostly it's just the different font. And I think if you do this, you might need just a smidgen, try a point more of space to the right. You want to make sure it's the same as here below the Z, but it may need that little bit of breathing room. I think you want to try and be, I mean, obviously you're not going to align it left and right, but because you have this big space here, we do want to think about the shape that text makes, the columns make, and whether it needs to be a little, have a little bit more of a straight ending here to align with this. And you might play around with a simple drop shadow on the image. So I was looking at this. I like the sketches and the lettering that goes with it. The red is a little intense, and this has got some sort of a vintage look to it, and so it might be that with this color it needs to be not quite as intense, and then possibly a little bit towards a burgundy or a merlot kind of thing. And again, you might try a little bit of drop shadow for that. Now, these all have the shadows falling in the same place. Just something to think about. I'm not sure it's worth doing anything about it. Probably don't want a single word by itself from a sentence at the end. And right here, you want a little more space, right? Let's see. We double check. I mean, it could be that these are centered, but here's what happens. Yeah, these feel centered, and this one and the last one feel left aligned. And so, think about that. And if that means you have to, edit this down if you're able, then maybe you should, do that if you want to center align them. When you do, make sure you've got the same amount of space under your image, between your image and your text, the bottom of your image and your text, for all of them. Okay, so these two appear to feel like they have the same amount of space, vertical spacing. This one, not so much. I realize that probably opens up a lot of space there, but something to think about. Okay. I don't know what this would look like otherwise, just to keep in mind. This feels like I'm going off the page a little bit. It is going towards the page, and that's important to move things towards the inside. And I wouldn't do it for this one, but in the future, although that is on the inside of this page, so that works. He's looking kind of in this direction, so that works all right. And this is coming in. This is pointing in. All good. Directional lines pointing in. Okay. This one, it definitely feels like they're just floating. And so, and I think you want this to align with that. So I would move that one in a little bit. Yeah, maybe make this one slightly bigger. And over just a little, there's a lining there. I think I would put it here. Let's see. Talked about that. Yeah, so when I'm thinking of this red, I'm actually thinking something, maybe not the brown, but, you know, something a little closer to the color of wine. But otherwise, you've got a great start on that. The other thing, I'm not sure if I would use this shade because, I mean, it does kind of repeat from the noodles, but, probably shouldn't call it that. But we do kind of have the rounded corner there. And you've got possibly rounded corners there. It just seems a little, it feels like it's not happening someplace else. Now, maybe once you, yeah, I mean, it's not a big deal, but I think I would change that color a little bit to be a little more, more of a wine color. So, okay. All right. Looks like you put a lot of research into it. Yeah. So what I would do, you created this in Pages. So I think what I would do is, well, I know what I would do, depending on how much time you have. I would make another copy of it. And then I'd copy it, and then I would start pushing it around a little bit as far as colors. And I think you mentioned that about the color. So, yeah, and then, let's see. Yeah. And this is also the only place we see that, so that keep that in mind. I don't know where else you would put it, per se. I mean, this is consistent, and that's great. But yeah, I would make a copy, and then I would make this background kind of a line. If it's for print, that, I don't know, it might cost a little more if there's, a lot of deep colors, but probably not that big a difference between the yellow. And of course, depending on the weight of the paper, if the dark color were to show through, it shouldn't, but, and I don't know if this is for online, although it apparently has a fold, so yeah. And I'm curious where the fold falls, if that's going to be taken up by that, if that's even an issue. It may be an online magazine, but that's my first impression there. And this you would want to align with this. So we've got this much space up here, and does have a little bit of a curve, but you might want to think about on the next version on your copy, bring it down a little and align it with that and just see what you think. And okay, yeah, and I think I mean, like I said, I would play with things and I would think about this. Make sure that this font is used somewhere else. I'm not sure it is, and so I would think about using this. You need just a little bit of space there, maybe, from this. Just a little. All right. Let's see. I think you had another file. It feels like it's actually concaved out instead of in, just the way the light is. Probably a little more light in here would help do that. Because it's a light on the other side, it looks like there's shadow here, and it makes it feel like it's coming, curving on the outside instead of the inside. And I think it's supposed to be the inside because of the way this is. Okay. Make sure you leave a little more padding around the outside. Probably similar to how much you have here. We'll bring that in just a little. Okay. Yeah, this seems like you've worked on it a little. I mean, this feels a lot more like sauce than what I thought I saw the other day. This one actually feels better. This one feels, this feels like it's been skewed a little bit, right? The background. And it feels like kind of a generic background that it probably is. And at first glance, it feels okay, but I think it would, if this was the thing you were doing, you would take a photograph of it, right? But this
is a reminder. Post
but this feels stronger. It still doesn't feel like the fork is working with interacting, actually. Okay, I would, is this the same font as this? It's not a bad idea to have, your headings be a different font. It is bold, and that's better. Little space. Okay, this one is bold too. Yeah, I mean, maybe even just making this a little deeper so it feels like it's actually, on that. But from a distance, I think these two are stronger than this one. Maybe that was your first one, or, you could just do so many of these, I know. This is really clean with this. Looks like you need a little more space on the left. The font is bigger and that works because now you've got some hierarchy. This is bigger than this. And these were kind of close. I mean, they're different, I can see, but just not as different as this. I wonder Yeah, I like these. It's a little more space. This might need to be more, instead of cutting in, or this shape, see how that points out, that shape points out? You might want to round it a little, either round it this way or round it, just soften that just a little or make it out. I mean, yeah, this goes in, but what I'm drawn to is the one coming out here, whereas here, this comes in, this comes in. Maybe comes out just a little. So yeah, that's what I'm feeling about it. But I think it's working for you. Maybe, since this isn't flat art, maybe just a wee bit of a drop shadow. Really soft. Here. And here. So it has just a little bit. I like the flat feeling, but so it just has a little bit of dimension. Okay, that may be a lot more detail than you were looking for. Yeah, I like the last two. This is really bold. You know, I would do another one that had this just slightly gray, very slight, not very slight. So it's a little more metallic. I mean, I love the way it is right now, but you know, that's just, I would probably work on it. I know what I do. I work on it till they tear it from my hands, but that doesn't always make it better. I just do that. All right, Diego, really great job. I can see how you've grown, and that's really cool to watch. All right, great job.